Howdy, folks. Welcome to the podCAST Iron. My name is Laura Mullen-Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our guest on today's episode is James L. Hayes, and many of you in our iron art tribe already know James, but if you don't, he is an Irish visual artist who employs the use of iron and the casting of iron in many interesting ways within his body of work. During this interview, he covers all of this and more, and I'm so excited for you to get a chance to do this deep dive with him in this interview. James, thank you so much for being informative, honest, and transparent about your journey in life and your artistic practice. From this conversation, I learned so many things about you, your art, but also about Ireland and the art culture in Ireland. And it was very interesting to hear the nuances from your perspective, but also amazing to hear about some of the support that you get. So thanks again for taking this time to speak with me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, for everybody who's listening or watching, before I go any further, I have to blast this into your ear. The city of O'Fallon, Missouri hosts a rotating sculpture series called The Shape of Community. And if you've listened to any of the past, 6 months of episodes, I know that you've heard me talk about this opportunity, but I've got a new and exciting update. So if your sculpture gets chosen to be installed in O'Fallon, there is a $4,000 stipend for the loan of your piece. And that's for an 18 to 22 month loan, depending on your needs as an artist and the kind of installation schedule. And that all can be hashed out much later once you get accepted. But there'll be 10 sculptures selected. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but I heard from an insider, I'm just going to tell you that there's not been very many entries yet. So you've got a good, get your application in. I don't know if everybody is just procrastinating or waiting right until the deadline. But if you have a sculpture that's suitable and you're willing to install it for almost 2 years, a little less than 2 years, for $4,000, what are you waiting for? Seriously. And so the city of O'Fallon has provided me this exciting and informative clip to show you. So I don't know what's more exciting than watching me get so, why has nobody applied yet? I've been talking about this for months, but let's watch it together now.
If you're an artist or know someone who is, become a part of O'Fallon, Missouri's The Shape of Community Rotating Sculpture Series. No matter what medium you choose to sculpt your masterpiece, you get to use the whole O'Fallon community as your canvas. The Shape of Community invites artists from across the U.S. to have their work installed in prominent outdoor areas of O'Fallon to allow the public to see and interact with their creations. Some have even become permanent installations at sites within the city. Visit o'fallon.mo.us/shapeofcommunity for current examples and for more information on how to submit. So whether you weld it, cast it, or carve it, let the Shape of Community shine a light on your creation. It's time to cast your mold on a city's landscape.
So yes, when you visit their website, you'll see that at the moment, the cast iron art community is very well represented in the group of 10 sculptures presently installed. So let's keep it that way. And you've got a good shot. The deadline for this call is coming up soon, and they'll be jurying your entries at the beginning of March. So, get your submission in as soon as possible, definitely by the end of February, but, really just so that they know what they're working with. And if you have any detailed questions about this opportunity, about how your sculpture might fit or something, or any questions about the installation, please contact the Cultural Arts Coordinator, Martin Linson, and his email is mlinson@o'fallon.mo.us. But all of the information is ready for you to start applying. And, I think each individual artist can maybe apply up to 3 different sculptures. So what are we doing here? What are you waiting for? It's a really great outlet for iron casting artists to showcase all the big heavy metal work that we've been casting. And it would be a great line on your resume. And, just like get to work. But now that that's out of the way, I have a few words about our amazing sponsors of the Podcast Iron Show. And the show is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon. So that's about 20 of our friends and colleagues. So thank you to everyone who has joined as a Patreon member to help me afford the production costs of keeping the show going. But also we have some top sponsors. And so I want to just introduce our top supporters since they really help me with the majority of the cost of keeping the show going. So the top sponsors are Sloss Metal Arts and Crescent Creative and the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. And, they really have been so wonderful in supporting my ability to keep on going. And so I just want to take a few moments to personally thank them and also give you some more information about them. So one longtime top supporter of the show is Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art, and they're based in Birmingham, Alabama. They host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices every 2 years. And so, we just had the conference in 2023. So the next conference will be in the spring of 2025. And if you want to be kept up to date on the national conference related things, follow the NCCCIAP Instagram handle. But right now that's kind of dormant because it's in the off season, but also definitely follow Sloss Metal Arts on Instagram and on TikTok, and they are not dormant. They are posting things all the time, and they'll keep you up to date with all things Sloss related and conference related. But besides the national conference, they have a year-round schedule, including cast iron bowl making events, and the foundry is available to be rented out if you want to bring maybe a college sculpture class there on a field trip or work with their artists. At the moment, they're accepting applications for resident artists, and that is a 3-year full-time paid position with health insurance. All of the information about this is on their website, which is slossmetalarts.com. But the deadline for the application is Friday, March 1st. So that's also coming up. If you're, freshly out of grad school, or you're looking for maybe a career change, or you are kind of maybe in a job that you don't like so much and you want to try your hand at being a full-time foundry artist, this is your shot. So set your application up and get it in, and good luck. And thank you, Sloss Metal Arts. So another top supporter of the show is Crescent Creative, and Crescent Creative is a digital design and fabrication studio located in Birmingham, Alabama, and they utilize CNC router technology to produce foundry patterns, outdoor signage, furniture, and public art commissions. So if you have questions about what maybe they can do, they definitely have answers and solutions. You can find them on Instagram at Crescent Creative. Check them out and give them a follow. They're always creating interesting and artistic custom designs for their customers, and I really love seeing their projects pop up on my Instagram feed. So thank you so much, Crescent Creative, for becoming a top sponsor. Your support really means so much to us. The last group that I'm going to mention as a sponsor is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and they are a really amazing organization that consists of iron casting artists that are spread throughout the western states of the U.S. So their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the U.S. And one way that they accomplish this goal is by hosting a conference every 2 years. So start planning to come out west for their conference in fall of 2024. This upcoming Western conference will be at the tail end of October in San Diego, California. And I just wanted to point out that you don't have to live in the West or the Western United States to attend the Western Conference. It's open to everyone worldwide. So you should definitely make the trip. They'll love to have you, and I will see you there. So a big thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for their support of this podcast. Now, for more information about this fantastic organization and to keep up to date on what's going on with the conference, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. And I think that you can also sign up to be a member of the newsletter. So, they don't send out many things, so you don't have to worry about them slamming your inbox or whatever. It really is strictly conference related and other event related things. And so if you're interested in what they're doing and keeping apprised to what they've got going on, sign up for their newsletter. So finally, let's get into this conversation. But I just want to mention that James and I recorded this conversation in June of 2023. And right now it's January of 2024. So just keep in mind when we start talking about things that we're looking forward to, some of them you'll know have already happened. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. James L. Hayes, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's brilliant. And greetings from a really beautiful sunny evening in Ireland, which is a weird thing to say, I think. I'm trying to think of the podcast irons I saw outside of the US, so this is a funky one.
I think that this is the only one that I've done, over the sea.
Okay, yeah.
So far. So I got to get more for sure.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of like stepping into new territory, but it seems like the internet is great. And I'm really excited to learn more about your story. So let's start at the very beginning, like we always should. And well, James, who the hell are you anyways?
Okay, thanks, Laura. My name is James L. Hayes. I'm an artist. I'm also an educator. I think I've spent a long time, more time than I can think right now, in education and working in education, both in the UK and in Ireland, and doing a lot of visits to the US, which kind of introduced me to the iron movement, I guess. I guess we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I grew up in I suppose in Southern Ireland, or Republic of Ireland, on the south coast, in a county called Waterford, which is famous for Waterford Crystal, as everyone knows, probably in the US, and I think also famous now for Commander Waterford in the Handmaid's Tale. I always thought that was kind of profound, the way Margaret Atwood titled him that name. But anyway, that's a segue. Yeah, so I grew up in County Waterford, in quite a rural place, really. And I mean, I grew up I was born in the 1970s, and I went to school there. I was one of four kids. I was the youngest, and we lived in a kind of a rural, small village, something tiny in comparison to what we know of in the States, And my mom and dad were great. My dad was an interesting man. He was a kind of quite a savant, really. He was very talented at everything. He could build stuff and he could grow stuff, and he was quite inspiring to watch. I think that's where I got my kind of fascination in kind of building stuff, and he was painting and drawing and all those kind of things. My brother was a great young kind of artist, was all drawing things and birds and stuff, and we spent a lot of time in nature, and you know what I mean. We did not quite hippie-ish, but we were kind of a kind of wandering family, and we had chickens and veg and all those things that seem quite righteous nowadays. Yeah. But it was back then. It was kind of quite normal, and it was tough, I suppose. Ireland in the 70s and 80s wasn't the Ireland that we know now. It was quite poor, and it was quite repressed, both socially, and rights were not so great as they are now. I mean, a lot changed. It was there was an big economic depression in the 80s, and I grew up in this kind of industrial town, not industrial in the sense of a Sloss industrial, or in terms, but it had a big tannery, a hide making processing plant. Yeah, for animals, and it was set up in the 18th century. And this village was built. It was called a model village, which was built around the shape of a hand, and all these streets went off in the shape of a hand, and all the workers filtered into this industrial cavern, which was a tannery. And in the 1980s, that tannery sadly went kind of pop, and the whole village became kind of economically depressed. And so I kind of came out of there, and I went to school in our bigger city, in Waterford City. That's where I mentioned where Waterford Crystal came from. And then I was very much into playing sport. I kind of still I'm into sports, not so much playing. Playing days are well over. But I think it's an important thing to mention, because I think sport is a great thing. I think it sets you up really interesting as an artist. I love artists who are into sport. It's one of my kind of things I like to hear, and I think everybody's got their team or something like that. And my sport was an Irish sport called hurling, which we play. It's a kind of unique Irish sport, and I also was really into playing rugby. And I'm still really into rugby, and I still follow our province, our local province, Munster, which is a big thing for us here, and Ireland, of course. We're just number one rugby team in the world. I just got to mention that while we're being interviewed, leading into a World Cup in September. So we just got to get that out there.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I went to I got into art in school, and I got into an art class, and it was like one of those things in the 1980s, you can imagine, just wasn't that celebrated. You weren't everybody wanted to be an engineer or, go to universities, but art school wasn't that a great thing, and it wasn't greatly supported in Ireland. And Ireland is very small, and it's so we have certain districts that had art schools, and they were in the bigger cities. So there was 5 or kind of 6 of them. There's a little few more now, but you can imagine there's maybe 8 to 10 now or something. But at that time, there was kind of 4 or 5, and one of them was LSAD, Limerick School of Art and Design, and that's where I wanted to go. And I was kind of it was a little bit strange to me, because I don't know, it was just kind of a weird thing in school. It's to do with your age when you enter school. I left school very young, so I kind of graduated when I was 17.
Oh wow!
I was 17 in the March, and then I entered art school in September of the same year, which was 1991, and I was kind of 17 in art school, so I didn't know my fucking arse and my elbow really when I arrived up there. So I kind of went off to live in Limerick with some mates I knew from my local area, and just kind of landed into art school and doing life drawing and making sculptures out of clay and plaster and things. And I just really didn't know what I was doing. I kind of wanted to just leave home and meet girls and do all those kind of things that you did, drinking and smoking pot, and whatever it is that you wanted to kind of do when you wanted to go to art school when you were 17. And we were listening to the Doors, and listening to the Cure and the Smiths, and kind of just playing guitar and doing all that stuff. And I don't know, and somehow I kind of scraped through the first year. I don't know how, really, when I think back in it. And then I somehow kind of managed to get into the second year, and then a wonderful thing happened to me, and it was just by pure chance, was that we had this amazing European Erasmus exchange program. I'm not sure you might have heard of that, but it's for all the interconnected parts of Europe, where they sign up to the Erasmus agreement, and you get to exchange a place with a like-minded, or it doesn't mean like-minded, but another student in another university abroad. So at our school in Limerick, we joined up with loads of universities in the UK and Spain and Holland and everywhere. And I wasn't doing great. So my head at school came down and he said, "Do you want to get out of here for a bit, James?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And he said, "Do you want to go to Spain for 4 months?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." So we got a little bit of money. I mean, I think it was like £500. I mean, we're in euros now, but I think it was £500 for 4 months there. So, I mean, they gave us a few Spanish lessons or something. It was brilliant. So I kind of went off with a few of my other fellow students from Limerick. Yeah. We landed in North Spain, in Vigo. None of us had a word of that Spanish from the Spanish class. And we got met by the professors there, and they took us and they said, "Here you are." And they dropped us into this art school in a place called Pontevedra, which was north of Vigo. And it was part of University of Vigo, and the Faculty of Bellas Artes, the Faculty of Fine Art or whatever. And I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And I met these group of students from the UK, and they were lovely. And I was, again, I was 18 now. I wasn't, I was on. So you imagine, I was 18. I was kind of in Vigo. I really didn't know anything about art, but apart from, the Impressionists and the Renaissance and stuff that we were told on that totally ridiculous canon that we're just told from that up in art school.
Yeah.
So I kind of talked to these guys, and I started kind of wandering around the town, and I didn't know what I was doing, I guess. And one of these guys, I think Benji was his name, he said, "Do you want to go for a spin with me? I'm going out to the coast. I'm going out to look at some of the ship builders guys." And I said, "Yeah, we go for Spain, whatever, be great." So I got in a car, and we met these Spanish welders and ship builders who were putting together, servicing the trawler fleet, because we're on the northwest coast of Spain. You imagine that's fishing central out into the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So and this guy Benji says, "Can we take some of these offcuts of steel?" So he said, "Yeah, take them away, guys," whatever in Spanish, and vale, whatever, go, whatever. So we filled up his car full of steel, and we went back to the studio in Pontevedra, and we found these two little arc welders, and neither of us could weld, but we kind of taught ourselves without YouTube, I could just say. And so we taught ourselves how to weld. So I taught myself how to kind of stick weld.
Yeah.
Arc weld, sorry, should I say. And I started making all these kind of Julio Gonzalez kind of esque sculptures for 3 months. So by the time I finished, I kind of 90 of them or 100, and all these kind of Anthony Caro meets David Smith meets Alexander Calder meets Picasso sculptures, anything I could find in a book. So I was making these kind of men in the streets, and just these kind of really basic, literal kind of stick figure kind of things. I was making little ships and everything. But whatever it was, anyway, I found my mojo within steel.
Nice.
And the kind of rest is history in a sense for me on my path. But I got back to Limerick, and I was 18 and whatever, 19 or whatever, as in 4 months, whatever. I kind of snapped, and I was like, where's the metalwork room? I want to be sculpture making. And then I did. So I spent the remaining kind of 2 years at Limerick School of Art and making these really big fabricated steel pieces. And for my degree show in Limerick, I made a kind of huge, big kind of installation that you walked into, and it had moving cylinders. And it was kind of inspired by the kind of industrial archaeology of around Limerick and around the region. There's a big, huge cement limestone quarry and stuff like that. So I went out and did all the drawings and figured all that kind of stuff out. So that's all what kind of happened on the back of that. But it was that kind of really pivotal moment for me where I knew what I kind of wanted to do then, and that was kind of sculpture. And I, like also all I hear in your previous interviews and things, there's, is that the fabrication element that comes so strong in people's work. And it was the medium for me. I knew that then. So, yeah.
So then what happened?
So it gets a little bit more complicated, and not complicated, but then what happened, basically, I suppose after then, I mean, again, just to reiterate, I mean, Ireland was a small place, and this is kind of in the early 90s now. So, and there wasn't really much happening in the art scene in Ireland, and there was very little opportunities, particularly for young artists. There was things happening. And I mean, there was things happening, but the kind of route for us at that time in the early 90s, this is kind of getting around to around 94, 95 now, was you just booked your ticket and you went to London. That's what you did. That's what everybody did. You found you found a school that would take you for an MFA, or you found a job, or you found something, but you left. You didn't stick around here because there was nothing. There was really nothing. Imagine now we're good 10 years maybe off, or a little bit less than the Celtic Tiger starting to roar here. And so I don't know how, but I ended up kind of applying to UK art schools, and I wanted to go somewhere that had a kind of industrial heartland, because I was really into this industrial archaeology and machines, all the things that like we know from a Sloss or putting all those towers and all that. That was all my scene. I was looking at Becher photographs, the German Becher, the guy Becher guys had a couple, and I was really inspired by that industrial heartland. So I ended up applying to schools in London, and I got into a number of schools in London, but I couldn't go. I couldn't afford it, and I couldn't afford to live there. So I got into a couple of schools in the Midlands in England, in Birmingham, and another place outside of Birmingham, Leicester, called the Montfort University Leicester. So I went there in an interview. And this is directly after my degree. Usually people would take time off. I didn't. I was kind of on a mission, and I was 21 then, whatever. So I went to this school, and I met someone great. I met this professor, this lady, Jill Journeau, and she really liked what I did. And she was really encouraging to what I did, because I kind of weren't that encouraging to what I was doing in Limerick. And it was difficult, but I plowed my own path and I got on with it. So I met her in the UK and said, look, you need to come here. We've got a little foundry. what's a foundry? I said. Anyway,
Mm.
we said, and they said, we've got a metalwork room and it can be all yours. We've nobody working metal, and we have a huge university, and it's a huge industrial town. Leicestershire has a big colliery history. It was really big part of the Industrial Revolution, all that centre Midlands of the UK. You can imagine where iron and steel and stuff was born, and all the collieries that supplied further north for the iron and everything, Sheffield and steel and stuff. So I went there. I got on. She arranged me to go. I took up the course the kind of following September, and I started my MFA. But I think I was like 22 or something. I was a kid, and anyway, I just plowed on head forward like a rugby playing person, and just pushed my way along. And I kind of got on great there, and I loved it, and I met some great people, and I started making all these. I found all these great sources of steel, redundant steel everywhere. So I just, and I didn't have a truck or a car in it. We just had to manhaul it, or we just didn't have. I didn't have any money. We didn't have any grant. We were just getting student loans and credit cards or whatever. I don't know why we did, and we were going to the pub a lot or whatever. And we just, so I made all these kind of massive, for my MFA show, I made all these big industrial pieces. And then I met this guy who had a little foundry in De Montfort. And we had no access to any hot metal, and there was really none in any art school. And sadly, there's none in any art school anymore. And I'll maybe talk about that a bit later. But I found a guy that was making some aluminium, and he was trained as a pattern maker in a kind of industrial setting. He wasn't from an art background. He was, like, you've talked a lot about kind of pattern makers to other people. So he had this really novel way of making green sand molds, and he was beautiful. And I was like, nah, just throw it in there or whatever. But he wasn't there. So I made some little lead castings that I fitted into my sculptures, and I made kind of other little kind of components, and they were very minor now. That was kind of not necessarily my introduction to casting. It was very light. It was lead and aluminium something. So it was kind of think what we put in the oven right now. You know? But so it wasn't my kind of moment for metal or anything. But then after that, I did my MFA show, and I kind of felt a bit like, what do I do now? And then it's very daunting at that point, as you know yourself, that and particularly, this is 2 hours up the road from London, up on the train. So you're kind of competing, and everybody's saying, you need to go to London, you need to go to London, you need to get your work out there, you need to talk to this guy, talk to that guy. And this is actually, the internet is just kind of breaking in now. This is kind of 96, 97. And it is kind of breaking in. Like, we're emailing people and stuff. You have Hotmail has arrived by then and stuff like that. And you're emailing things, and you're looking at things on website. You're not exactly booking your Ryanair flights or anything yet, but it's starting to happen. The web is arriving. So what happened then was I started just having to get back to reality. So I was kind of working as a chef and working in shops and job, and then it was kind of like, fuck, what am I doing? So then a friend of mine, a guy I knew in college who's a poet, amazing poet, actually, we've got a lot of his books up here above me. Sean Bardale, his name is, really, really amazing English poet, who came visit me when I was a student in Limerick through the Erasmus scheme. He came with me, because what happens when you do Erasmus scheme is somebody goes from your apartment and they get swapped in. So somebody from whatever, Illinois comes to Limerick, and somebody you get a Lauren and you get a James or whatever. So Laura, sorry. And so he'd come to me a few years ago, and we kind of reconnected, and he said, hey James, or Jimmy, actually, they used to call me then, everybody calls me James now, but he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I just finished in De Montfort here, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, I'm working at this foundry in London. And I said, why are you working in foundry? You're a printmaker, dude. Well, like, what's that all about? And he was like, well, I don't know. I got a job to a friend, and blah, blah, blah. And we're working here. And he said, what, and I said, well, can you give me a job? What, how does that work? Like, and he's like, yeah, I guess. So anyway, I don't know. I kind of got on the train and went down to London. I was in Leicestershire, and I kind of got on the train, went down to London, and went to the East End. It was really down and out and shithole back then. Now it's gentrified to the extreme. It's where millionaires live now. It's and it was a really renowned foundry. It still is. It's called AB Fine Art, and I got down there and I met my friend Sean, and we started talking, and he said, meet the boss. And the boss is a great guy called Jerry Hughes. He was a manager, and the foundry was owned by a guy called Henry Abercrombie, which is hence the AB Fine Art. And
Yeah.
he was an amazing guy. And they said, who the hell are you? Like you said in the interview, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
And it was like, it was a different time. And they, and I said, well, I was really nervous. I mean, again, I think I'm 22 or 23 at this time. And they were saying to me, well, what do you want? And I said, well, it's a job, mate, And they were like, well, what can you do? And I was like, well, I can weld. And, and they were like, do you know anything about casting? And I was like, yeah, of course I do, which I didn't, at all. I mean, very minor things, but I could weld. I was a good enough fabricator and stuff like that. So the big guy, the boss, Jerry there, he kind of said to me, I'll never forget it. He'll probably kill me now if he hears the saying, but he said to me, look, and he's just he's a messer, joker. And
Okay.
he said to me, he said, look, here's a shovel. You're a paddy. You know what to do with it. Which was kind of like, it was kind of like a really, kind of jokingly led insult, but it was kind of a test. It was a test in the same way. And this guy is 6'8" and 400 pounds or whatever. And I was kind of thinking, well, I've kind of a few options here. I can kind of try and maybe hit Jerry with a shovel over the head and run away before he gets up, maybe. Or is this the kind of opportunity here? And I kind of thought, I said, yeah, no problem. So I kind of flashed before my eyes that moment, was because thinking that they're like, yeah, look, and they said, look, we'll give you a week's trial or whatever to work here. And that was a huge turning point for me working there. And I kind of spent 7 years there, and it was amazing. And if you can imagine, like, it was kind of this is 1997. This is in the kind of middle of the YBA time. The birth of the Young British Artists had happened 2 or 3 years later. The Sensation show was just a few months away from opening in the Royal Academy. The Shark and the Damien Hirst and the Marcus Harvey and the Jake and Dinos Chapman and the Rachel Whiteread and everything. And lo and behold, that's who was making their work there, So we were kind of entered into this foundry. There was 30 guys. Everybody had come from an MFA somewhere, and really prestigious schools like the Royal College and the Royal Academy, and everybody had an artistic practice, and everybody was totally crazy as well, and everybody wanted to hang out, and it was a total foundry atmosphere. And that was kind of, forget your BA and your MFA and let's start over.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of happened to me. So I kind of went through the mold shop, the wax shop, and then at that time we were doing big investment castings, Grog and Ludo, huge 6 foot, 8 foot castings. We moved with cranes drop them into huge kilns and burn them out, made with Grog and Ludo and stuff. And then later down the line, they changed over to ceramic shell.
Okay.
We didn't have any sand. I didn't see sand till a later time. I'll tell you about that maybe later. And they also had a big kind of fabrication element. So they had a number of workshops in this beautiful old, it was called Spratt's Biscuit Factory, a dog biscuit factory, if you can imagine that. It was like a Victorian, it's beautiful. You look at it online. It's a beautiful red brick building, right in the, East End of London, totally Victorian, beautiful. And they had refitted all of it out for, there was mold shops on the ground floors, all metal and bronze casting and kilns and everything. And also the kind of story around it, which is important to my own story really, is that it was set up, the guy that set up, Henry Abercrombie, and another guy, they'd set it up because they were both lecturers or professors, whatever you want to call them, in Central St. Martin School of Art. And they were technicians, some of them were technicians, some of them were lecturers, and they were working with the great kind of modernist artist Barry Flanagan, who makes the hairs, who's famous for making hairs, but very interesting conceptual artist in the 60s. So he became quite famous early on in the 80s. And so they were making so much work for him that they kind of felt they needed to build a foundry particularly for him. So it kind of got built around him. So he was very much a central artist in there. Sadly, Barry's no longer with us. He died about 10 years ago of motor neuron disease. But he was an amazing artist, and still the Barry Flanagan archive is still within AB, is still within Fall Street, the same location where the foundry is, and the AB Fine Art still make his work. So we spent a long time making work for Barry and doing assistantship for Barry and kind of going on visits with him. And that was amazing. He had a kind of crew of guys and girls, more guys back then. I gotta say that the girls, but that's certainly changed right now. But so that was an incredible time. So all the time I spent there, I kind of did a bit of everything, and I kind of went part-time a few times, and I started teaching and doing different things, and then doing my own work. But I mean, it was the who's who of the British art scene that went through there. And it really opened my eyes, I suppose, to that incredible knowledge of, I talk about it a lot with, and I think I maybe talk about a lot at different Iron conferences and stuff, but that notion of authenticity and the kind of the one-off and the mold. And when you realize, I kind of make that point, like the Rosalind Krauss, that American art critic, makes this point all the time, is that when you see a Rodin, and you think, oh, it's beautiful. And then you go to another museum and you see the same one,
Yeah.
Hang on, I thought that was in the Smithsonian there, right? And then, so when you work in a foundry, a commercial foundry to some of the size of AB, or even some of the other artists you've had on the podcast, that notion of that imaginary, that illusion of the authentic is crashed around upon you very fast, and the commodification of art and how little the artists touch on so many things is so valid, and that was amazing to me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe, like, when we were making these Flanagan sculptures, I mean, we were making editions of 30 of them. And when we were making Rachel Whiteread's, we were doing editions of 50 of them. You know what I mean? And they were like just, I mean, it was like, it was incredible. They were just flying out, and the things we were making so many of them, and that had a kind of profound effect on me, and it still has on my work. In a sense of the multiple, and which is more important. Surely it's the mold that's important, right? Not the object. That's it. So I talk a lot. I'll probably talk about that more.
Wild, yeah.
That period was huge for me, and it's something I think about and refer to all the time, and it kind of gave me the kind of the skill set that I really needed. And I think most people that end up either in education or end up contributing to the Iron community, whatever, have those skills. They've kind of been at that industrial level. And we poured big volumes of bronze. We had kind of one big bull ladle, and we had other mainly doing by hand. We mainly just did shanks pours, and there was just teams of us. And we eventually, I remember it was a big moment. We got a huge induction furnace. I think it was one of the first ones in London. And it's this incredible thing, and a power cable on it like this. We thought, like, it shut down the London Underground one day. It was driving so its power into this induction furnace. So that was kind of massive to see all that, and to see that change, and also that it just exposed the art world to me really profoundly. And it also allowed us to make, like, I made loads of work. Although I worked there 7 days a week, 7 days a week, or 5, 6, 7 days a week, depending on what we were doing. And we were going on site, and we were going overseas, and in some cases set up shows in New York and London. And the client list was, Mark Gwynn, Rachel Whiteread, and Chapman Brothers, Gavin Turk, Gary Hume, every Anish Kapoor, everybody was through there, and Barry Flanagan, of course, was making huge amounts of work. So that was incredible. So one day you'd be welding up a Flanagan, and the next day you'd be polishing a Anish Kapoor. So that was kind of amazing. And it was amazing hilarity of stuff. I mean, there's the stuff that goes on there. Obviously, can't tell you all about it, but it was a great camaraderie, and something akin to what we feel, I think, in the Iron community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how did that lead into Iron?
Well, that's a really good one, actually. I kind of looked at that question, and it was the reason I kind of expanded about AB so much, was because it is the direct link to me to the Iron thing. And it's kind of a sad story in a sense, but I was great friends, and I still am great friends with a guy called Bob Booth. I don't know, I hope Bob probably listens to this. I'm sure he is. Bob's retired from his teaching post at Coleg Cigar in Wales now. And he was great pals with another friend of ours, a guy called Andy Griffith. And he was a really seminal person in the Iron movement. I'm sure you probably heard his name. They call him Griff. And he was a Welsh artist, an amazing artist and amazing kind of ironcaster. And I remember what happened was when I stayed in contact with AB. I left AB in around 2004 or something. I did my teacher training part-time in the middle of all that. I forgot to say.
Oh, wow.
Went to the University of London, and I found a art teaching training course for if you want to teach at higher levels. So not school, you want to teach at university, or what they call FE, like college level, maybe further education in they call it in the UK.
Okay.
And I got a grant, and I felt that I was kind of sick of grinding stuff and sick of welding stuff. I was kind of like, what am I doing here? And it's pretty unhealthy, and we were working hard and we were playing hard, and I was thinking, I can't do this forever. And I was living in London and I never had any money, and the usual. So I did my teacher training, and I thought, well, I have an MA, I have a BA, and maybe if I get this, maybe I'll get a job. And I'd been up for a few jobs and I didn't kind of get them. And people said to me, you need a PGCE, which is a teaching certificate in the UK, which they all need now really to teach in the UK, or well, nowadays a PhD obviously as well. So I went off and did that at the University of London part-time and continued to work in AB. And while I did that, then I kind of took a job teaching part-time in various places in London and outside of London. And then eventually I took a job in the Midlands working at Anglia Polytechnic University in Cambridge, teaching sculpture and teaching at a college called Stamford College. And I kind of led a course there for a while in sculpture and all that. Anyway, I wasn't that happy there. I kind of moved back to the Midlands. I didn't really felt I belonged. So a friend of mine was working back in Ireland, and she kind of texted me and said, hey, look, there's a sculpture job going here, James. This could be a great one for you. And teaching in Ireland is great in the sense that we have really long holidays. It's really well paid, and it's kind of it's very suitable if you want to hold an art career as well, and full time, is 18-hour, 16-hour teaching load. So you can try and have time. A lot of that gets sucked up with all other things. That's a separate interview in itself as well. But anyway, just to get back to my path into iron, I stayed in touch with a few people, and one of the people I stayed, because I worked with my friend Bob in AB for years. We worked on Anish Kapoor sculptures for ages, which kind of broke our heart, and it was really hard work. We were grinding stainless steel sculptures for 2 years or whatever we were doing. It was crazy. And Bob had left, and he'd moved to Wales, and we'd stayed in touch. And loads of us had stayed in touch, loads of us. And then Bob had said to him, Griff, because Andy Griffith, he had worked at AB. He got Bobby's job. Now, he hadn't been there when I was there, but I knew him. We'd met at various things. And he said, well, Andy's doing iron. And I said, like, what's iron? What's iron? Like, why would you do that? Right. And he's going, no, he's working with these American guys. And I said, what American guys? What are you talking about? And he said, no, they're doing this thing in New Mexico. You should go, James. And I was like, what do you mean New Mexico? Go? And he was like, no, you should. You'd love it. It'd be great. And I said, okay. And I wrote to Griff, and he said, yeah, no problem. James, you'd love this. So Griff wrote me this mail and then we were using email now, around 2005, I think, or something. So he said, go, and this is Dave Lupdell. This is Dave Lupdell in New Highlands University, Las Vegas, New Mexico. And this is James Hayes. James works at AB. Right? Yeah. So it was a bit of back and forth. And Dave said, in total Dave fashion, he won't mind me saying it at all. He was like, yeah, man, come over. Send me stuff over, man. We'll make it for you. Right? And I'm like, what the hell is this all about? So he said, so I kind of, no, we didn't have Zoom or anything kind of then. So I kind of said, what you mean send me? He said, yes, just send some stuff over. We'll cast an iron for you. And then you can come over and meet us here, and we'll do an iron pour, and we'll have a few beers, and we'll hang out, and you can talk about your work or whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever. This is fucking mad. Anyway, Anyway, I go off then, and I just got my job at Crawford, where I work now, which is Munster Technological University, Crawford College of Art and Design. It was then Cork Institute of Technology, Crawford College of Art and Design. So I got that post I mentioned earlier. I flew over from England. I'd been in England over 10, 11 years. I flew back to Ireland, didn't tell anyone because I'm sick of applying for jobs and not getting them. Yeah. So I went over, did the interview, got back onto the plane in Cork, flew back to England, didn't tell anybody about it. And then in the summer they said, hey, we'd love you to come to this job. So I got back to Ireland and I'm still here. But anyway, in the meantime, I was emailing Andy and Dave, and they said, yeah, come over. We're doing our Iron Tribe. Okay, come over. And they sent me a poster and sent me an invite. And I said, I need something for funding. I need something, a letter. Dave wrote me, fabulous Dave, as always. He wrote me this beautiful letter. So I was able to go to the Arts Council of Ireland and said, I don't know what the hell this is, but they've invited me over to it.
Yeah.
I'd love to go. And they said, okay, yeah, this sounds interesting. Nobody's ever asked to go to an iron pour in New Mexico before, right?
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll break that boundary, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of think, okay, well, this is an opportunity here. So I kind of send some patterns out to Dave, actually similar to ones I'm looking at over here. Okay. I sent iron canvases. They were canvases that I was making. So I sent some wax canvases that he was able to burn out, I think, or I can't remember now. And so I got on a plane, and then I thought this is ideal time for a road trip. So because I'd been to America, I'd only been to New York and Boston just as a tourist. I'd never gone anywhere further west than that. So I thought, feck it, I'll go to LA and I'll drive to New Mexico.
Yeah.
Wow. Right? Okay. So I was like, I got some money and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So flew to LAX. I mean, imagine, see that as you picked up a hire car and hit the road, and all the way through. And I went for Arizona. I went down to Phoenix and Tucson and did some stuff, and then I went up to the Grand Canyon, and I went across, up to the southern rim, and then all across Utah and the Four Corners, and down in Santa Fe and up to New Mexico, and then eventually to Las Vegas, New Mexico. And everybody thought, by the way, I was taking a piss saying I'm going to Las Vegas, because they just thought, yeah, James is going off gambling for
Vegas, right?
Yeah, Vegas, because they never heard, as did I, heard of Las Vegas, New Mexico, as I think most people do. So anyway, I kind of get there and I kind of think, well, and I don't know if you've ever been there. I hope you have, but
yeah, I just actually went this year at the beginning, right before Sloss.
Yeah, I thought you said you had in the last interview.
Yeah,
right?
It was a bucket list thing for a really long time.
I mean, and this was 2006, I think, or 2000, maybe 7, maybe. And I turn up and you stay at the hotel, the hotel. So, and they were really weird to me in the hotel, and they couldn't really understand my accent, and they wanted me to give them their passport, and it was all really weird. And No Country for Old Men had just been released, and I was kind of thinking, oh my God, like James is never going to be seen again here, right? So anyway, I kind of go down. This is kind of answers a lot of your questions in your kind of, where did you feel your first iron, or when did you? So I kind of think, and I mean, this is kind of in the days, I guess, before, emails on your phone and WhatsApp, and
it is.
I mean, you kind of could have texted someone, but I mean, Dave didn't answer text or whatever, so I was kind of on my own or whatever, and I kind of just figured out where the university was. So I walked down to the university, and even it's kind of late in the evening. I think it was the Friday night of Iron Tribe or something.
Yeah,
it was a long time ago now when I think back on it, and it was fucking crazy. It was like a scene from Mad Max or something. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. There was like huge kind of these big ball cylinders, and then what I later found out were Kirby vacuum. They were stuck in it, they were blowing on the sidewalk. They were blowing these huge things up in a fire, and then there was a plane on a thing from a window flying over on fire, and there was iron dripping out, and there was furnaces in a line. I'd never seen a cupola or anything like that. I just couldn't compute what was going on at all. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? What excuse my language.
Yeah.
What is this all about? And it was like incredible. And there was molds everywhere. There was molds everywhere and stuff like that. And then eventually people started coming and said, who are you? And where do you come from? And I said, well, I come from Ireland. And then I met an amazing Irish friend of mine who was there. She turned up, latter become friend. I'd never met her until then, obviously, Rian. And then we kind of went back to the bar in the Vegas hotel, and I just got to meet everybody. And I was sitting down at the table. I met Dave, and Dave was like, this is Dan, this is Rian, this is Matt, and Andy, of course, was there, Andy Griffith.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we all just sat down and just kind of bonded, and it was a really strange thing. So then the next day, we'd had lots of beers and late night and stuff. And the next day, Dave was doing a production pour, which was massive on the side of there, and it was hundreds of people there. Then we were hot dogs, and I mean, there was hundreds of people there, and it was kind of snowing, and it was hot, and then it was like weird, and it was like we were like, I just couldn't get my head around these cupolas. And Dave, I mean, I wanted to find the picture. I had this amazing picture of David with one of his pals. He was a student, I think he was a grad student, but they just had these amazing Mexican sombreros on, you know, the two of them, and they're full leathers, and they were standing there like that, and they were going, woo, you know, and I was just like, I mean, it was like going down the rabbit hole, and I was like, this is not, I just don't, you know, and I couldn't kind of get, I mean, when I think back on it, I still can't really get my head around it, because I kind of didn't know what they were doing. I gotta say, I'd never seen a cupola. I mean, I had never seen a cupolet or cupola, whichever. They had both there, and I just didn't know what they were doing. So I was talking to agents. I eventually made great friends with Matt Toole, you know, the ordinary. Me and Matt became bonded at that kind of thing and made great friends, and we later went on to do lots of stuff together. I'll talk about maybe later. And then I started talking, and I hadn't really seen sand molds and stuff. And then David loads of beautifully made shells as well, as he's such an expert in shell. And then I went into the workshop, and he had all these guys kind of minion around. It was, you know, organized chaos, you know, but just incredible. And so that was my first experience of seeing iron. I couldn't get over it, and I kind of jumped in a little bit. I kind of did a little something. I don't think I did much at that time because I didn't have gear or anything, and I was kind of a bit like, I was kind of a bystander. And then the next day we did the great stuff where Dave did his slide roulette, which was brilliant, and everybody got to talk. And then we had beers, and we actually had a brilliant party around at Dave's place, and he built one of his fab Fibofax things just on a whim. And you know, so that was my kind of introduction, and I met so many great people there, and I still, you know, and so that was my first introduction to that, and it was the first time, you know, really seeing iron and seeing the difference between it and bronze, you know, which, you know, I know a lot of people talk about on the podcast and stuff, but they're just that fundamental difference, both in its preparation in the cupola method or whatever, and also just in just the viscosity and all the alchemy and all the theater and all the ritual that goes with that, you know what I mean? And that was profound to me, you know, it was really profound. And then I went up and saw David cast a beautiful iron canvas for me and hung it on a wall, and patinated a beautiful ferric oxide or something. It was gorgeous. And I met everybody, and I met Toby, and you know, all it was, and they were just, as they always are, like I said when I mentioned Sloss, they're all just so nice all the time. So that was my first what an introduction, you know. So and then I had to drive out of Las Vegas, drive all the way back to LAX.
Oh,
you know?
wow.
So, you know, with a substantial hangover, I could tell you. So
it's a rite of passage. It's a rite.
Yeah, and like, I'm really sad because they wrote to me again this just before Sloss, and I had to make I couldn't go to Ironshine because of my term, where my semester, it's right in the middle, and so I can't go. I was able to go to Sloss this year, luckily, because I was able to apply for some funding, and it came during my Easter holidays. That's how I was able to go.
Okay.
But yeah, so the journey kind of, what happened then for me, I was really taken by that, and I was thinking, geez, this is not so. So I met, as I mentioned, I met some great people there. I met Carl, and met Rian, met Toby, met Matt Toole, met Dan, and obviously me and Andy started saying, because Andy was making things in Wales. He was working at the Coleg Cigar, which is a Welsh name, but it's the University of West Wales in Carmarthenshire. And later then, that few years later, Andy went on to do the international in Kidwilly. I couldn't go to that, actually. I was doing a big project here in Ireland, my own projects. But so I met a few people there, and they just, like, you know, yourself, and like everybody said, that kicked on, that just dovetailed into the next thing. So I think the next thing for me was Carl had invited me to take part in the Salem Artworks project that she did, the US UK project. So that literally the following summer, I went out to upstate New York, up to Salem, up to Saw, and stayed there for 2 weeks and did loads of made some. That's when I really got the chance to make stuff. And then I met the wonderful Julie Ward, and she was brilliant, and we became great pals and met some great people like Felicity Giddon, and obviously Cora was there, and we had 2 weeks to make molds up in the barns there, and we made these huge sand molds. I'd never made any sand molds before, and I was just fascinated with it. So I made loads of just mad stuff, made loads of donuts and whatever the first time. And then I got to kind of help the guys with a cupola, and Julie was just obviously such a consummate expert, and was just yeah man, everything we do this, and she just taught me that and taught me this, and we just went around and had great fun. And I love cooking and stuff like that, so I spent a lot of my evenings cooking for people. And so I really enjoyed the big barbecue. I made some really good curries and stuff like that. So I made some great pals there.
Yeah.
And that was the next thing. And then the next thing then was that I carried on my kind of relationship with Matt and Rian, obviously Rian Karan, part of the Western Lights, who supports you guys. She said, well, we're having our first Western in conference in 2009.
In Denver, right? It was in Denver, yeah.
It was in Denver. It was brilliant. So I came back home and I was raising awards. I was back to the Arts Council and said, well, I did great things in New Mexico. Give me some more money to go to Denver. So they did. So I kind of went over to Denver, and I kind of it was like, I don't know whether in my own practice, like I make a lot of things, to make a lot of public artworks, make a lot of large scale things. I also make kind of gallery stuff. And obviously, like I mentioned at the start of the interview, is like having an apprenticeship like that at a foundry, and having this kind of casting thing in your blood, you end up having some cast element or some process element all the time. So process is a big thing for me in my work. So, but then, I maybe had a little bit of a crisis in my work. So when I went to the Western in 2009, I don't know, I think I got myself into a bit of trouble. I think I was kind of giving out a little bit, because I was kind of thinking to the guys, I was kind of thinking like, guys, like, what are you making here? Like, I know you're casting this, but what is it? So I started being maybe a bit vocal about the kind of notion of kind of, what are the ideas behind this beyond the process? And I know it's something that's kind of debated very much at the moment. I remember being a slot, everybody's is kind of onto the ideological or the intellectual backing of their works, or bringing up the kind of intellectual rigor of the work. So in 2009, I was kind of coming at it from that point. I was going, these are great and all, lads, but like, what are they? Like, what are you doing? Why are you casting a He-Man sword that's like 6 foot tall? Like, what is that for? And it was like, yeah, man, because I can, and it was like, well, that's great, like, but like, where is this, like? So I was kind of questioning a lot of that,
but that's good. I think it's good in any, that's like the most famous thing about going to grad school is they'll try and shake you from whatever you love. I feel like, because they are trying to make you prove why it has to be in that material, whatever it is, no matter where you go, no matter what. I feel, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe I'm talking a little out of turn, but I feel like that's a thing, is they try and
they kind of shake you from that thing, because the thing about it is, and this is no denying this, and which is that the hard work, and Wayne's great word, which I love, in sweat equity, the investment that you put in it is worth it. And I believe that. I'm a big believer in it. You work hard in it, it's great. But just because you work really hard in it and it was really difficult to do, doesn't mean that it's any good in a sense that in an artistic quality, in a sense that you imbue some, I suppose, contextual or conceptual research around what you're trying to imbue in the work, or whatever context it does is. And look, I'm not slagging anybody off. Please don't get me wrong. It's just that I was questioning the fact that, there's a huge kind of subculture around the art community, which I love and I'm part of, in a sense that I love, but it's so wrapped up in us, the technicalities of stuff, us figuring stuff out, because everybody's a one-man foundry here. Everybody's a one-man knowledge. And like, you've talked loads in your podcast with loads of the guys that are far more expert than me about the whole technicalities of that and all of the idiosyncrasies of each of their approaches, which are nuanced. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Mine, we are all the kind of product of the nuances and of everybody else's, and I love that, and I think that's what makes it so special. But it's like, I mean, we went to, I went to talk at Sloss where they're saying that, everybody's going to come and tell you how to make your sand mold different, and it's not even sand mold, it's your rubber mold too, and it's everything, and it's how you build your bot and how you make your tools, and some is crap. But what fascinates me all the time is it always still seems to work somehow.
Yeah, it makes it. Yeah.
It makes it work. But anyway, so going back to Denver, I went to Denver, and I think that's the first time I met Wayne. And I like everybody does. Everybody is just so immensely attracted to Wayne's kind of generosity and kindness and openness, So
Yeah.
and
And he's a wealth of
I
knowledge.
was completely suckered by Wayne. I just felt he was amazing, and we somehow got on. I don't know how, because I was kind of shouting my mouth off either about, I don't know, rugby or not wanting 3D printing to take over or some nonsense I was going on about, and the digital and all. I was giving out about loads of stuff, but I was also talking about the kind of commodification, which I talk about a lot in my work. Maybe get a chance to talk about that a little bit later, but just the notion of the authentic. So what does it mean? And I was kind of thinking then, I mean, it was amazing in that conference in 2009, which, Toby was in, Dave and Rian, and they did an amazing job. And they had incredible, this industrial venue, and they did, 10, 15 cupolas running, huge performances. And then they had these techno guys do these kind of robot war guys, which was a company next door and they did this kind of robot war fight off. And then, just so many. There was a great guy from Montana, Brad, and the other guys from the Western. They were all there, all doing just amazing things. I mean, you just couldn't go anywhere. You just couldn't look anywhere. And I built this piece which I loved called, and I still have it. I kind of, somebody asked me to show recently, called the Rocky Mountain Flyer. I got a bit bored at the conference or whatever, so I kind of went to Walmart and I bought loads of these polystyrene gliders, and then I drove up into the Rockies for a few days and started flying them. And then, they're the little beautiful little polystyrene gliders, and I started flying, and then I started filming them with my mini DV camera, so that they were like flying over the mountains or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I edited this film, and then I collected bits of cast iron I found along the road in kind of mines and whatever, put it in the boot of my hire car, and then I went back to the conference and I got them to shell a poly a poly glider.
Yes.
And then I got it cast with, one of the crews I jumped in on, and we cast it, and then I sprayed it white and brought it back to Ireland, and then I made this film of the Rocky Mountain Flyer. So it was this notion of that idea of crossing the Rocky Mountains, you know what I mean, and how easy and light this glider was, and what a big deal it so was to go west, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was kind of interested in that notion of this thing that was perceived as heavy to be light, and it's a little bit cheesy. It's a material clash, blah blah blah. But I sprayed it white. But it's there's a piece I made there, one of my favorite pieces that that was made at that conference. And I remember I made a big version then, a huge one, and then Dave took that down to New Mexico and cast it. I don't think I ever saw it again, but anyway, it was I think it's probably in Dave's amazing pile of artist cast iron that needs collecting, I would imagine. So that was Denver, and then I met some great people there as well. That kind of led to more things. I mentioned there, I met Wayne, and I met Toby again, and me and Matt Toole hooked up then again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met Mary Newbear, who was just amazing, and I thought was absolutely fascinating. She was fabulous on your podcast.
She was.
And me and Mary became good pals. And then a kind of funny thing happened, and you like this kind of thing. It was a funny thing happened. I can't remember who said it to me. I can't remember who it was now, but I think it was could have been like Dave or Toby or Wayne. I could have been Wayne, I think, or Ian. I can't remember. Anybody said, I think it was one of them said something along the lines is like, James, they said like, James, why don't you stop coming to our iron pours and drinking our beer, and why don't you just go off and make your own furnace? And I was like, maybe I should now. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I should. Can I really do that here in Ireland? Really, in my job? Just kind of thinking, can't be that hard, really, is it? I mean, these anyway. So it was kind of funny because they were laughing at me, going, "Stop going over and drinking our beer and passing comment on us. Why don't you do your own shit, right?" So I was thinking, yeah, it's kind of a fair point, really, So I kind of said, okay. So I went back to my job in Ireland, and I was like, okay, what I'm doing. So anyway, I was just in work one day, and then email comes across the airways, as it does, saying research office grants available for new projects, whatever. And I was like, well, maybe I could write one to say I want to build a cupola, even though I have no clue how to build a cupola. So I was like, okay. So I wrote this grant up, and then I got in contact with a brilliant organization here who I still work with and I still have my studio with, which is called the National Sculpture Factory, who are in Cork. I'm based in Cork City. My studio is still currently in there. And I went to them and I said, look, I've been going to these mad things in America, right? And they're making iron, and it's all really democratic, and it's all a big conference, and it's not a talking conference, it's kind of making. So I explained the whole class, and they said, yeah, that's very interesting. And then I kind of showed them videos, and then they went, oh yeah, oh, I don't know about that, because I kind of showed them pictures of Iron Drive and stuff. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll never get that insured. And I said, well, look, let's just try.
Because of like the flames and
Yeah,
that's what turned
just
them.
because it's just a very different climate here,
Okay.
and it's similar to the UK. UK is probably worse now. But anyway, this was coming to around 2010, 2011 now. So I wrote my grant, and then I got some money. They gave me this grant, and I said, okay, I designed out a furnace, and then I talked to Matt Toole talked about it, and then I said, well, I'm kind of really struggling with this. And then I kind of talked to Andy. Andy was great. He was in Wales. I said, okay, well, why don't you get your students and in Wales, and you come to Cork, and you get 10 of your guys, I get 10 of my guys, and you come and teach sand molding, because I haven't a clue how to teach sand molding. So, and I said, I'll build a furnace. And I was like, where do you get coke, by the way? Right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a nightmare, right? So I had to get coke from Poland and get it shipped in and get EU things. Oh, OMG, like you can't believe how complicated it is. So anyway, and then the other idea, and I said, well, I was talking to Matt a lot about it, because he was saying, and I said, well, why don't I just get some money for you to come, and you could come and help me do it? So he said, yeah, man, I'd love to come to Ireland. So
Yeah.
so then like Matt got on a plane. I had my cupola kind of finished. I built this huge cupola, 34 inches wide.
Oh my God.
Absolutely massive thing, right? And I call it the Bull. Okay, I call it the Bull because it was so big, and I call all my cupolas after Munster rugby players. Okay, and we have this very famous Munster rugby player, 111 caps for Ireland, called John the Bull Hayes. No relation, but so I called it the Bull, and I loved it. It's absolutely monsters thing. And it had like 6 tweers on it, and I built these laser cut. I was massive, huge wind belt, and I did no sums on it, or I don't know what I was doing. So Matt got off the plane anyway, and he was like, "What the hell is this thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of big. Do you think it's big enough for whatever?" So
Do you like it?
He was like, "What are you looking at casting, a car or something?" Anyway, so it took us like. It took us like 2 days to line the thing or something.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and it was just me and him. It was just me and him. And he was staying. I got him put up here in Cork, and he stayed for me for about 2 weeks. And then I invented this thing called the Iron Ore Project. That's what I call it. I call it Iron Ore Project. I wanted it to be R for research and iron ore, like that kind of thing. I invited Andy and from Wales and Bob, and they came over, they're all friends, and they brought 10 students from Wales. And I got 10 students here, and I got some more money from various sources. And then we had Matt come and help us, and we did our iron project. So we did a week-long mold making in the sculpture factory. Now, remember, no one had ever made a sand mold at all. And we didn't want to use anything toxic, so we started using CO2, sodium silicate setting sand. Yeah, which is great, but really finicky. You imagine it's kind of the worst thing to learn on, because it's so kind of finicky.
Yeah.
Imagine if you started, you could use resin bottom sand or even green sand or something that kind of sticks together. So we trained everyone in that over a week, and we cast something like 2 tons of stuff in 2012 in the first iron project, and it was amazing. And I had like, I swear to God, like I had tin buckets lined with refractory as ladles. Like seriously, that's what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing, and Matt was great. And it was a huge hit. It went down amazing, and it was a kind of a revelation to us. Really, one, the fact that we did it, and there was nobody. I mean, again, there's only a few commercial art foundations in Ireland. There's only like 4, and they're tiny, and they're only bronze, and and nobody does any iron. There's one iron foundry in the north of Ireland, which makes, drain covers and stuff like that. And they won't take any art stuff. Believe me, I've tried. They won't take it. So that was it. So it was a big hit, and it really kind of hit the art scene here. So then after that, then I kind of thought everybody was kind of throwing money at me then. So they were saying, well, why don't you do it again? Come on, we'll do it again. Make bigger. So I thought, okay, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. I'll build another one. So, and then we had this idea to do a big performance. And on the quayside in Cork, which is the video I think I showed you the city with Matt Toole.
Yeah.
Right. And Matt was brilliant with us. And so I said, look, come back in. And he developed this performance, and I made a smaller cupola, a bit more manageable. Smaller, like 24 inch or something, or 28 inch, called Axel, who was named after Anthony Axel Foley, who sadly passed away too early, 50 or something, heart disease. He was another great Munster rugby player. And it was smaller. And then, but we invited 30 students from Wales and 30 students from Ireland. And we had an open call of 20 artists. And then I invited Rian to come from Denver, because I just got to Denver. So she came to work with us as well. And then I had this idea. And this is where I run a little bit contrary to the Iron kind of movement. In a sense, my idea for the Iron project always was that we invited people that never did any Iron.
Yeah.
So no, it was totally new to everyone. But the kind of the rub of that was that it was so much work for those of us who had experience, because we could teach everybody everything. So imagine you'd no pouring crews, you had no one to know how to make a bot, you'd no one to do any, you'd no one with any knowledge. So in one way, it was a huge load on me, Matt, Rian, people like that, Bob, and people like that. We had another Bob there. So it was really difficult. And we had a few people that had done 2012 with us that had come back, and they were a help. But imagine, this is the thing that's really missing for me, and that's why I find it so difficult, is that there's no community here. You're looking at it in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. So to be able to pick up the phone like you guys and say, hey, I'm doing an arm pour here, like Kelly or whatever down. I need 4 guys. Can I fight? You get in it, and you're down there. Even in the day,
we all come. Yeah,
you're just there, and you're like, I know Laura can do. She's deadly at this. I don't have any of that. So in 2014, it became massive. It was massive, and we did this massive performance for Matt, and it was brilliant. I think it's probably one of his best ones he did. That's no offense to any of his other stuff, which was great. Yeah. But it was just beautiful evening. It was a beautiful spring evening, and it was incredible. I swear it was profoundly amazing, right? And he had our students, he was pouring iron into these big pyres, that he'd made, and it was so dramatic. And we got a couple of really good filmmakers to shoot it, and then we got some artists, music artists that Matt befriended in the National Sculpture Factory, and there was a sound artist and a drummer, Alex Pentek, who's kind of really well-known artist here in Ireland. And it worked out amazing, so that was amazing, but it nearly wiped me out, I gotta say.
I think understandably.
Yeah, it just really wiped me out. So I was kind of bust after that, I gotta say. I just couldn't kind of handle it anymore. And then I kind of went to do a few things with the international. I was on a steering group for a while, and then I kind of backed out. It was a bit too much. It was just before the Latvia thing. I just had too much on my own practice. And then later in 2018, I decided I kind of do the last Iron project, the Iron Ore project, with Tamsy Ringler, because I'd met Tamsy a few times, and I just thought she was amazing. And I saw her river piece, and I wanted her to come and kind of do a river version in Cork, because there was an issue with the Cork is built on the River Lee, and there's an issue about it flooding, and they're trying to build walls over the Lee, which is going to ruin the architecture of the city. And so there's this huge campaign. So it was perfect time. So she came and did a project in 2018, which was beautiful, and it's still here on show in Cork. It's a beautiful piece, and she's obviously an amazing person to work with. And then Rian came again, and we went back. She did some great stuff with it as well. And so that was kind of, so I kind of closed down that project. I kind of did a little thing during COVID. I got everybody together during COVID, and I did a COVID arm pour outside of the National Sculpture Factory for the first time. I went out into the landscape, and it was kind of wasn't private, but I just didn't shoot any of those kind of movies.
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
did before. It was about kind of death. It was about kind of sadness, and it was if you lost anyone, we kind of had this kind of memento mori pour. And then in between that time, I kind of did a really, oh yeah, and in between that time, I think 2016, in between the last round, I went back to Mary had invited me to ASU to do some work with her MFA guys because she had a fabulous MFA crew there, in Phoenix. So I went and I timed that with the Western when I was in Scottsdale.
Oh, fantastic.
So
Yeah.
I kind of went to that and joined in, and then that was an amazing conference as well, and saw the amazing late and great Dan Hunt did an amazing had these beautiful free running cupola there, and yeah, there was an amazing keynote at that, and then I was able to go and then work with Mason Mary down in ASU and see her MFA guys, and there was an amazing crew, and that's where I actually met a guy I met out in Sloss, Joseph Bigley. He was working down there at that time. He was doing something with Bobby Zanikis. He was doing some Bobby was an intern. I think he was a teaching intern or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And so so I met some great people. I all met them back at Sloss again here in 2023. So yeah, so that brings me to my kind of iron journey, and in a sense that I just kept all those relationships going and still do, which is amazing. And like this year, obviously coming to one of the things I want to say, I think, was, and every time I went and met anyone at these pours, and I went to loads, and was like, they'd say to me, "Have you been to Sloss?" And I'd go, "No, I've got to get down there. I've got to get down there." And finally got to go down there, and what an amazing one. It was.
Oh yeah. So this Sloss was the first national
Yeah,
conference.
the first time I've been.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought it was amazing. And I think I'll definitely try and go in 2022 just to see everyone again. And like, it's just so amazing. I mean, just one of the things I just want to comment on. I got asked to kind of jump in and be guest judge on the student coupon thing, and that just kind of blew my mind. I mean, if any of those teams are listening out, I'm sure maybe some of them are, some of them maybe not, but they're just incredible. I mean, it just blew my mind, all of them. I mean, I wish we had, like, I don't know, some $1 million prizes to give them all, because it was impossible to pick winners. And I mean, there was things like timings and stuff like, yeah, sure. But like, geez, I mean, you saw them, right? I mean, they were incredible. They were better than any professional iron casters in the whole of Europe, like any of them. I mean, they were just extraordinary. And I mean, I talked to them all during the different days.
Yeah.
And they were just amazing. Like, I just can't, each one, I keep looking at my own video back. I'm just like, geez, they were amazing. Geez, they were amazing. Oh, I forgot about that. Geez, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And like,
I mean,
the
future is so bright.
I mean,
with all of them.
Like, they were just like, I would give my front teeth and glasses if I had a couple of those guys around here now. I mean,
well, they'll come. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much that we don't even know what's going to happen. But they're all just killing it right now, and they're just going to keep growing, and they're going to keep maturing, and then they're going to be organizers, and they're going to be planners, and they're going to be hosting, and they're going to be looking for international internship or artist residency experiences. And it's just, I mean, just to see, or really to hear how everything has been growing and expanding exponentially, because I came in 2009. So things were already pretty big, but now it's exploding, especially with social media and the connectivity of the internet. So I wouldn't be surprised if, you get to work with some of them in the future.
I mean, I was really fortunate. I was really, really fortunate. Back in 2018, Tamsi wrote to me after we did her river piece here, which was really profound, actually, her river piece here. And like, because it's very hard, it's very hard on the community and everyone and the artists in it, like you just mentioned there, to kind of keep reinventing pieces or performances and things like that. It is really difficult because everything's kind of been done. We know that. Okay, and every kind of couple has been made and blah blah. But there's everybody's still finding a way. I mean, the performances at Sloss were amazing, particularly the opening one by
Aaron Schmidt.
Aaron, amazing, and just the beautiful sculptural nature of that. It wasn't for me, and I talked to Aaron about this. it was the topographical sculptural nature of the work that I loved so much, even more than the Iron Running Through. That was great too and all. And I loved the output afterwards, you know, and I talked to him a lot about that. And he's such an interesting, amazing artist and such an amazing breadth of skill and knowledge that he controls. But I was very lucky after we did RR18, Tamsy, actually, I meant to say Wayne had visited me in Cork sometime. One time too, he was coming through Ireland and he came through and I met him and we went for dinner with him and Ginny and we had a great time. And I think, you know, I kind of, again, you know, like everybody, bonded greatly with Wayne. And he was saying to make sure to come out to Minnesota or whatever while he was still there or whatever. And then Tamsy wrote to me and said, look, would you come and do a project for the Iron 50th, the Wayne's Iron 50th thing at the University of Minnesota? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I'm smashed here. I was saying I make a lot of big projects which take a while, and they involve a lot of engineering and a lot of contracting and stuff like that. But I keep getting sucked back in, you know, like The Sopranos. You know, I keep, you know, every time I'm throwing me out when I go back, you know. So I keep, so Tim said, come over, and I thought, should I want you to make this performance? And I always wanted to make this throne performance. And I was reading a lot of Greek mythology, I think, at the time. I think I was on holiday somewhere and I was reading that great Robert Graves book on Greek myths, but I was reading about Hephaestus. So I agreed, and Tamsy, in fairness, had got me some great funding. So I was able to bring an assistant with me, flew to Minnesota. I did a load of prep work here with a designer, and I built this kind of anvil-shaped throne that came together as a model in sections. And it was quite big, you know, it was quite big. It's about 2.5 meters high. But my idea was that I wanted to pour it all open face and put it together as while it was red hot. And then I wanted Tamsy sitting it. So, it was a strange time up there. But so we developed this 3D model. It was great through 3D modeling. And we built this beautiful 2 anvil shaped sides and then a kind of front and then a seat and then a big back that just clipped on. So I built these huge, big open face molds. We CNC'd this pattern. I'd made the model, but we CNC'd, did a wonderful tech fab lab kind of thing in UNM. And we made a big foam pattern and we just pressed it in sand, pulled it out, really simple. And then we rehearsed this performance of pulling it up with 2 gantries and popping it together I had 4 students, my assistant and myself. And then Wayne poured it with this huge bull ladle full of metal, which Kelly Ludwig made, which still is the hottest metal I've ever seen. It was like pinging everywhere. It actually kind of ruined the back of the throne because it just wouldn't cool down. It was like, have you ever seen that? It was like pinging so much. It has all these kind of dents in it. It was just so hot. I don't know how we got it so hot. But so we went there for 2 weeks, made the molds, and then Wayne poured it on the day of the performance day on the Iron 50th, and we pulled it together. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my God. And everybody's standing around. And I wrote this kind of lament. It was called Hephaestus Lament. And you know who Hephaestus or Hephaestus, however you pronounce this.
Remind me, because I
Hephaestus
don't remember.
was the god, or the god of blacksmiths. Vulcan, his Roman god is the same as Hephaestus. The Greek is Hephaestus. Vulcan is the Roman version, and then he's the god of the blacksmiths. But he was the illegitimate love child of Zeus and Hera, who were brother and sister, funnily enough, and they had a secret affair for 700 years, and they gave birth to Hephaestus. But Hephaestus apparently was deformed. He had one kind of little leg. He had one little small leg, and anyway, his mother Hera was not impressed with him, so they kicked him literally out of Mount Olympus and threw him into the sea outside of Athens, and he dropped to the bottom of the sea. And then, for some weird, strange Greek myth way, he was trained to be this incredible blacksmith by these 2 sea nymphs. So for thousands of years, he fashioned things like, Perseus's sword and the one's girdle, and all these great implements of antiquity and of Greek myth. And eventually, Hera, his mother, had heard about this great blacksmith Hephaestus, and so he decided he would make her a golden throne. And when he brought it up to Mount Olympus, because he was naturally kind of pissed off and stuff, but he brought up this golden floating throne and presented it to her in front of all the gods, and she was amazed at that, and she said, "Oh God, it's incredible, it's amazing, whatever." And then she sat on the throne, but when she sat on the throne, she couldn't speak anymore. So she remained silent for another 900 years and until he wouldn't let her go, as the myth goes. But look, there's millions of myth.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was a really interesting myth in a sense that someone to be silenced and someone not allowed to speak out anymore. So I kind of made this piece about that, and I kind of made one of the sides slightly thinner, like the leg. So it was the shape of an anvil. So one was filled up quite high, and one was like 3 inches thick, and one was like an inch thick. And then we pulled it all together. And then obviously I wrote this lament, like a poem. And then I had someone, I don't know if you've been to the UMM Foundry, but it has a kind of a deck above. It's got almost like bleachers. It's like a viewing platform.
Okay.
So I had a student read a bullhorn of my lament, and I had it back to the audience. So you have to say everything back. So it said like, "Oh, Hephaestus, you are not the one we want. Get out of here," or whatever. And then the audience have to say, "We are not the one you want." So they had to. It was like a prayer, you know.
Yeah.
We suffer so much kind of Catholic guilt here in Ireland that we're used to being brought to mass, and then we have to pray and say back stuff at funerals and stuff. So it was like this kind of performic thing that I made. So when we poured it, I dug out the sand molds. We got all the hooks in it. Everybody was watching around, and I was thinking, this is never going to work, or I'm going to pull it apart because it's like red hot, like.
Yeah.
And all our gloves were catching fire, and it was
yeah.
So anyway, I got my hooks in around it. We had a plan. We stuck to the plan. I made these little hooks that went in around it, and then we started pulling it up with the two gantries, and it came together. And then I smacked it together with sledgehammers and wood, and then it was like steaming red hot and all sand around everything. And then I was like, okay, Tamsi, you gotta come sit in it now. And she's like, I can't sit in that. I'm gonna get burned to pieces. And then this is beyond I didn't set this up, I swear. And then without saying anything, all of our students and everybody around just got their leathers and threw them on the throne, on the seat, and onto the back and onto everything, and biled them up, and they all started kind of smoking. And then Tamsi sat in it and sat there for a minute and started clapping. It was amazing. It was amazing kind of thing. And and it's gone to Camponi Sculpture Park now. So if you're ever up there, that's where it's in there. But it was a kind of performic. I had never made a kind of performic arm piece before, but I wanted to have this object connect. It just connected together. It was just like it's like a kind of a Lego, not a Lego, but that's a bad word for it. But it was like it was a form that clicked together.
Yeah,
worked it out. I must send you a picture. Actually, I think there's a picture on my website, but
I'll have to look. Yeah.
Yeah, so did that, and it was kind of moving, kind of performing thing. It all just kind of one of those things that happen in arm pours where it just kind of works out. You know what I mean? It just kind of works out. I don't know how, and nobody got burnt or anything. And then the jacket started flaming, and then we had to take them off.
We're like, okay, you're done.
And everybody was kind of taking it because I don't think people thought, oh, that's not going to work, or that's not going to work. But I suppose that's why we do this stuff, isn't it? You know?
Against all odds.
Yeah, it was a mad one. It really was. It was a mad one. Yeah, that was last time before COVID. Then COVID happened, and then came back to Ireland, and then I kind of in between that I'd made, like, one of your questions I've seen in the things, like, how do you incorporate iron into your work? I mean, like, the thing is, I always incorporate it a lot of the times from found iron, I guess, and I think that where some of the context or meaning comes from there. I'm working on a mad project now that I was kind of meaning to tell you about. I think I told a few people when I was in Sloss, but I work in the district of Cork County. Cork is the biggest county actually in Ireland. It's by land mass, it's the biggest area, not the biggest population, but it's the biggest land area. And Cork County Council, like a municipal kind of government, not a government, but a council, who they have an arts office and stuff like that. They commissioned me a few times to make some work. So in 2012, I made a piece using iron, which is for an old British fort on the coast of Cork, which was commanded by the British when Ireland was under occupation for so long. And they wanted me to make a piece there, and I went over to my friend Andy in Wales to make this piece. I made this piece about the kind of mundanity of living on a fort as a soldier. So I found this plate rack, and I found these slate topped pastry rolling out tables. So I made these series of plates, but I went around the fort, which was all cast iron. You can imagine all the gutters and everything. I gathered it up for 6 months, and then I shipped all the iron to the UK, melted it all down, made all these plates, and then put them back in the fort, sprayed them white, and you know what I mean. And they had GPS on the back of them where I found the iron. So those are the kind of processy things I'm interested in. But the thing I'm working on now is kind of the maddest thing I've ever involved iron in. It's just kind of bonkers, and I'm just at the kind of the business end of it, I gotta say. I maybe talked to you a little bit about it in Sloss, but I'm working on this. I got a commission 2 years ago from Cork County Council again to make a piece of work about excuse me, the sporting tradition and culture of Irish road bowling. Okay, and it's a really ancient sport. It's about 400 years old, and it's a game it's played in lots of parts of Europe and used to be played in America by Irish people. But it's a game that involves throwing an iron metal ball from one village to another village, or one set distance to another set distance, usually around 3 miles distance or 5 kilometers here. And obviously, like golf, whoever can get it there along the road in the shortest amount of shots wins. And usually wins the money. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a huge tradition here. So you could be driving your car down the road here in parts of Cork. And it's only played in Cork and in one county in the north, in Armagh, which is over the border. So there's a lot of conflict between those two. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. But so they say that the game originated by the Irish people stole British cannonballs from British forts, 28 ounce British cannonballs, and played this game with them. Okay. And that's how it is. So we found out that they're not making these cast iron bowls, they call them, or bowls, they pronounce them as, like your bowl or fowl, like a chicken, they pronounce them bowl. Okay. So the bowls are not made in Ireland anymore. They're made in India and shipped here. They're cast in India. Okay. So there's no one making them here anymore. So they asked me to maybe make a work about this. So I thought, well, I need to make the bowls then.
Yeah.
And so I made some test ones with my smaller furnace axle about a year ago. But then I had this idea, because the game is played by two people. It's called the score. Okay. It's called a score. And a score traditionally is 20, is a slang for 20 in England and in Ireland. A score means 20. So if I lend you a score, that's 20 pounds or 20 euros or whatever.
Okay.
But they say that this game is called a score. So it's not called a match. You know, we call it a match or a competition or whatever. They call it a score. So we'll play a score. Me and Lauren will meet you on the road. We'll play a score to the next village.
Yeah.
And you've got to chuck it. And obviously it's a heavy 28 ounce metal ball. It's really hard to do. So you have to throw it overarm, underarm. You can sides every way. And you've got to get it to the next town. And you've got a guy in front of you or a girl in front of you who keeps in line where it's going. And then the first over the line wins. So they said to me to make a work about this. So for the last year, I've been developing a miniature cupola, a little kind of 6.5 inch, 7 inch cupola that will pour 2 iron road bowls at one time on the road and give them to the players.
Yeah.
And then the players will play the score. And then when they get to the other end, I kick the balls off them and I melt them back down again into their trophy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That was kind of the idea.
I love that idea.
And so currently that was the initial kind of concept of what it was. So I've been researching for the last year. Now I've made my little tiny furnace called Stringer, again, after master rugby player, Peter Stringer, the smallest international rugby player. So that's right. It's called Stringer. So he's got a small. So actually Wayne helped me do the sums for this while I was out with him in Alabama, but it's incredible. I've been testing it lately and it's just super quick and super fast and super fun. And it's been so profound experience, because I so wish I'd made a 6.5 inch one before a 34 inch one or whatever, because I just learned so much of making this smaller and figuring it out. Whereas it's actually kind of been harder to make the little guy in some ways.
Yeah.
It's just been a little bit more finicky and it had to be a bit more accurate with everything.
Yeah.
The big guy was just whatever, just push air in there. So that's what I'm doing at the minute. So what's happened? It's kind of spiraled. This project has spiraled because I realized that one is that it got quite big, it got quite popular, and the thing is that I needed some more money, so I sourced some more funding, And then I thought, well, I want to make a film of this. So,
Yeah.
and then I thought, I tried to start making a film with myself and a few guys, and we thought, this is shit. We can't make this. This is not going to go. So then I had to get a production company and get more money for them. So they've come in and they're starting filming. So now it looks really nice. And they're filming the furnace, and they're going, no, you can't film that. So it's spiraled. And then I was thinking, well, what about the sound? And then I was thinking, I tried to do some sound, and I thought, oh, sound, this is shit. So now I've got a composer who's composing a sound design and a sound score and a sound cinematography. So it's actually being released in July, July the 8th. You can tell this one's so stressed.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's happening in next month, and it's all coming together. So we kind of finished filming the boilers now, but we're filming the furnace next week on location. So we're bringing the furnace out into these kind of Irish landscapes and dropping iron out of it.
Awesome.
For the filmmaker. So it's something I've never done before, but it's miniature in a sense that it comes apart and it runs on a little €30 leaf blower from Amazon.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you sent me the videos, and I was watching that video, and I thought, is that furnace on casters?
Yeah.
So it's on wheels.
Yeah, it's on wheels.
And now that I understand
that's
what
why
it's intended for, I'm like, well, of course it's gotta be. You gotta be able to. Do you roll it with the players along, or?
Well, I set it up on the side of the road, and then we obviously you see, the thing is, obviously, to shut down the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We shut down the road. We to get permission from everyone. You know, it really is a really complicated operate. It's just a spiral. And the thing is, it's like, you can't do that here. So a lot of it is faked in a sense that I'm not pouring iron and in those shots. You know what I mean? It's running. It's running like it has coke and everything, but I'm not pouring any iron. I'm not making any molds at that point where I have casts where I've made like 30 of these road bowls where I have them wrapped in grass, and there's hedging and nettles and oak. And I did loads of 3D printed ones where I've done scans things, but I've actually made waxes and made individual bowls, and I've got the players hand grab them, and they in their hand. So it's just spiral. It's one of these things, but it's the kind of maddest iron project. I'm kind of looking forward to maybe bringing it to an iron conference or something, because it's very novel. I've not seen anything like this in my travels with the iron community. So I'm kind of interested to see what it will look like. You know,
because I mean, it talks about to travel, like the distance, because they're playing the score. Oh, wait, you coached me on what it's called, but I've forgotten already, because I've just been letting all of it. Is it this? What was it? It's not a match, is it?
Yeah, the score.
The score. Okay, so I was right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's called a score or score.
A score. So they're playing a score, and so they're traveling a distance, but then also the game pieces didn't exist before the score, or this score. And once it's over, they won't exist anymore, but you'll be changing their it's also about, like, I feel like from an onlooker, it's about distance and about transition from one form to another form.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's all of our drug for iron casting, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's the alchemy. That's our draw all the time. And I mean, it's going to be a little bit more hybrid in the sense than it's going to be quite abstracted by the time we get through the edit and everything. I don't know if that narrative is going to be so clear. It's literally being cut at the minute, and and there's so many moving parts in it. It's just an interesting one, because one of my ideas was like, and I think I kind of get a little bit frustrated, as a lot of people in the iron community did, with Matthew Barney, in a sense, doing that coup piece, which was incredible, with Casey and in that incredible work. But it almost sucked up so much of that kind of experimentation and sweat equity that so many of the iron community do, and pioneered kind of in their backyards and in their sheds. It was all almost taken. I mean, and look, that's what happens in the art world. Let's be realistic. They come along, and Ish Kapoor does that all the time. They find somebody who's really brilliant at making something, and they hire them. That's what they do. I don't live under a rock or anything, but it just is. I'm trying to do my own version in the sense of trying to recontextualize it, because that was what my argument was, I guess, back in 2009. I was trying to say, well, look, it can be this. And there's so many facets and interesting things. And when you listen to George and Dave and Toby and all this speak about the meanings behind it, they're deep and they're personal, and they're kind of really inspiring. And Wayne, even the pieces he said, quietness and the journey, and like there's so much rhythm and romanticism attached to everyone's thing. That's the wonderful thing about your podcast. You allow people to dig down deep into the facets and the fashions and the loves and the desires and the catastrophes that are upon them. You know what I mean? And they sing that through their work. I mean, like I keep always showing my asparagus sculptures all the time, and people always ask me, why do I do that? And I'm kind of fascinated by that olfactic aspect that asparagus makes your wee smell. You know what I mean? That's what they're about. That's what they're about. They're about that idea of waste. So I made this piece. Lots of people know me from making this piece, but I made this installation piece where I cast loads of iron asparagus. But the reason I cast them was that I was just reading about how asparagus is the most air mild vegetable ever, and it's equivalent to, when you eat a bunch of asparagus in Ireland, it's equivalent to boiling 20 kettles of water just to get it here. Not even mind to grow it. And it's all out of season. And basically, the other thing is, when your pea smells weird, is that what that olfactic element in your liver, that just gets rid of the toxins of the asparagus that it has in it.
Yeah.
And they're sulfates usually, and sometimes ammonias or whatever. And they're the same things that we use to color bronzes and iron, right?
Yeah.
So I grew my own asparagus over 2 years, peed out the urine.
Yeah.
Kept it, and then made a perfume with a friend of mine who's a chemist.
Wow.
And then I cast the asparagus, and then I made a sprayer. So I made an installation. So over time, my urine would repatinate them back into a green or a ferric kind of red.
Yeah.
So I keep showing those pieces in those vitrines, because they're kind of patinated with piss, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah.
They're kind of, that's what they're about. But because it's called the essence of waste, because they are why we. I mean, the why I made that piece was that with asparagus is brilliant to be grown in Ireland, and we have a perfect climate for it. It's very moist here, but it's a seasonal thing. It only grows from March to May, but we want it all the time out of season, like everything.
Yeah.
So, but do you know how many commercial asparagus farms there are in Ireland? Like there's one. So we buy all ours from Peru, and we live in Ireland, which is like 8,000, 10,000 miles away, or whatever.
Yeah.
8,000 miles away. So it's that kind of madness that I like in the work, and that process-led stuff, So yeah. So sorry, I kind of went on a segue there.
No, that was perfect, because I was gonna bring up the how did you use the iron in your work? So you already did that. So I kind of want to stick it to you a little bit, because you were saying that you were kind of maybe pushing some buttons and asking why iron.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to ask you outright, because you kind of explained different reasons and stuff, but I want to ask you outright, when you do use iron or cast iron, why is it important that it's iron and no other material?
Yeah, I mean, I've made so many iron pieces now, and I like it. I still think it is so important. There's something that, like, I made so many bronze things, and lots of valley things, like us all, I guess. But there's something about the democracy, I call it, of the iron that attracts me to it. There's something about the utilitarian nature of it, and it's also something about the fragility of it as well. And it's not as it's the humble nature of it that I like, you know what I mean?
I do.
It's like, and I suppose particularly here in Ireland as well, it's very unusual to see an iron sculpture here, you know what I mean, as well. So it's something that I like to show when I show work here. I kind of like the opportunity. People are like, iron? Wait, where did, and then you kind of say, well, you did it yourself. But there is that democracy thing that I like. It's the industrial side of things. You know what I mean? And there is that hierarchy that we all are aware of. That bronze is here, and that mirror polished stainless is here. You know what I mean? And it's this, and iron is somewhere in the bottom. But like, like I wrote a few papers about this, and I wrote a paper for a conference in 2000, and I talked a bit about the iron movement in it. I call it Materiality of Austerity, the
Mm.
paper. And it was like, I kind of questioned the notion that people are returning to these kind of more kind of humble materials. And at that time, like Grayson Perry, after the British artist, the ceramic artist, had made a whole series of amazing works in iron, and showed them in the British Museum. And then there was this huge clamor by the art press to go, oh my, the reinvention of it. And I felt like saying, Jesus, lads, would you feck off? Like, there's a whole movement over the pond there that have been championing and works in this notion. And just because Grayson Perry has just whacked a few votes out of this now, and they were beautiful, and Grayson Perry makes beautiful work, but there was this clamor that I suppose the blue chip artists had gone into that. And the same thing I kind of referenced to Barney there. I know it was a different kind of thing, and that engaged so much of the art community, and there's so many stories about that. I think there'll be a film out of that sometime, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's that kind of utilitarian. But I suppose, like everybody and loads of people have said, and I listened to loads of your interviews, I keep coming back to that draw of the alchemy of pouring it and making cupolas and stuff like that. And I think, to be honest, that video I sent you was one even when I was testing that new little furnace. I was doing it on my own.
I could tell because the shots were locked off shots, and I was like, and you didn't have any molds.
Yeah, no molds. I was just trying to drop a bit of iron out of it to see how it was behaving. But I was kind of thinking, I remember, like I said to my email, I heard Wayne in my head saying, you can't do it on your own. And I was thinking, well, he's right about that, because you shouldn't do it on your own. Don't do this at home, children. I would recommend, but it was like, there is something about when you do it on your own. It's quite profound. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it was kind of like a profound kind of, just standing there and just doing it on my own, just feeding the furnace and tapping it out on my own, going, okay, there it is, boom, but there's a beautiful alchemy to that, which we all love. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's something about also witnessing like Chris Meyer does the pieces where he pours into ice, and other people have done things where they pour into ice, and but his ones at this point really strike me because it's the actual witnessing of the material changing shape in front of your eyes. It's molten from the furnace, it gets put into the ladle, walk it over to the bags of ice, and just as it's hitting the ice, that it's somehow solidifying. And then as soon as that's done pouring, when at the Western, he even took, it was like it had just happened. And then he took the bags of ice, and everything is cool now and melted and just wet. But the iron result is right there. And it's so beautiful because of the way that it interacts with the ice. And it wasn't until I was actually editing the footage from that, but I was like, I understand.
Yeah.
It's seeing that liquid to, that, we don't even see water go from liquid to ice.
Yeah.
These state changes is phenomenal. And that's why like open face molds are so beautiful. Or if you're looking at the pour cup, the top of the pour cup as it's cooling and how it changes, it's so beautiful and almost meditative. And
sorry, I'm conscious I'm getting dark here.
It's okay. Do you want to change you want to like take a little time out and change anything?
You want me to just, okay, that's better. That's sorry about that, Laura.
No, it's fine.
I was going to say there, I just thought of something. I find that I find that the other thing, and it's particularly happened since I just built this little guy, and it's kind of weird because I suppose when I was talking earlier about going to Iron Tribe and everything, I was really, and it still strikes me every time. I mean, there's such an artistry obviously in the cupolas and the furnaces themselves and the naming and all those things. And there's a kind of rites of passage and all that thing, all of that. And it's a real fun bit, because it's like making an artwork that has a function that's a machine, and that can be adorned. I mean, we've all seen these, glorious cupolas and the beautiful cupolas and contests and stuff. I mean, they're short, exquisite cupolas. That's what I was thinking of. That great piece that was made a few years ago, and like, some of them are, some of them, and they have such personalities.
Yeah.
I see all the stuff that Toby does, and it's so Toby, and you know what I mean. It has such humor, and it has such great character that he has from down there in Kansas, and all his own culture and stuff like that are all in it, and all imbues the students in the sense of worth. But I mean, some of the things I've just taken out of the kind of community is that I do feel, and I share this with a lot of people, is that at that point when I did a big Iron project in 2014, and we had like 60, 70 people there, and the bulk of them were students. Say there were 40 students there from 2-3 universities.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, and I remember, like, they're not coming from any place or pours hot metal or anything like that. So, but the learning there was just profound within a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'd gone from zero to having letters on and pouring iron, and then being an authority on it, getting back on the bus on the Monday. You know what I mean? So it was really interesting. And I still think, and I still argue with those people, it's the best learning environment, that I've ever witnessed in kind of as an educator, seeing everybody together and working together, and all those kind of buzzwords of teamwork, and just, just helping each other and being there for, and like, it's in my, like, and I've been to zillions of iron pours and stuff like that, and all my own ones, and I've never had an accident or anything. Nobody's ever had an accident, touch wood, nothing ever. So, and I think that idea of this kind of coming together is testament to that. And you see, the problem I have here is that there's a very much, like in America, some of this litigation culture, but there's just a big fear here. Like, so hot metal is completely unable to be supported in any university here in Ireland. Okay. And that's really sad, and quite sad for me to say that.
Yeah.
The projects that I've done, I've been on the periphery of outside, and I've had to do that with creative artistic stakeholders, and to do it by myself, you know what I mean, and then do it with like a local founder. So that's kind of sad in one way, and that's why I kind of go to the States a lot, like, because I was kind of feeling quite kind of down about it, and then I went to SLOS in April, and I got this incredible shot in the arm just by meeting people like yourself, and like, I guess so many people I could mention here now that I met that were just incredible. And you're amazing. You guys are, like you said earlier, it's in safe hands. I mean, geez, like, I mean, I can't wait to go to these things, because there's so much buy-in, and I think people like kind of Wayne and George and some are a little bit worried that it's somehow that they might be people to kind of kick in. But I think there is an element to be worried, because there is a lot, these things command a lot of work. You know that from the work you've done. They command a lot of work, and it's a lot of pressure, and you need to be backed. Like, one of the things I've learned as an artist is, and I do, as I said, I mentioned, I do a lot of kind of commission work and public artworks, lots of different nature, some sculptural, some socially engaged, some performative, whatever. But one of the things I've learned is that you've got to make it, the people that you're making for it, they've got to want it.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really bizarre, but like, a lot of the times I'm finding that I'm in the middle of projects, and you're arguing with them to get the work made that they commissioned, and I'm going, why am I arguing with you? And there's a similar thing with that, with the iron thing. It's like the coming together needs to be of a focus. So there was lots of discussion that's lost about the international, and that maybe we can do things differently, and I suggested maybe we have a conference, because they were asking me about what about Ireland as a venue, in a sense, and I'm saying, yeah, it'd be great, but you're not going to pour any iron here. And that was like, that didn't go down well, obviously, because it is about that, and it's so much not about a talking conference, because it was generated out of the idea that we didn't want to go to any talking conference and fly in an art rock star, and then they go away again, give a keynote, and everybody just sits from. This is a working conference. We make stuff. It's a real make, and I don't want to get away from that. But I do think there's room for a model. You know what I mean? That the likes of me can pull off here, because I'm not sure I can get this over the line. You know what I mean? In terms of 20 cupolas in Ireland, and we just don't have the infrastructure for it. You know what I mean? So that was kind of the things that's bringing up.
Yeah. Or maybe you don't have the infrastructure right now, but
not now.
We never know how things are really going to develop.
And there's some interesting guys in Scotland seeming to making some headway now as well. and we're hoping to do some kind of Celtic regional alliance at the moment. We're talking about it at the moment because we found out actually, like I have 3 cupolas here now, which you're welcome to the
In different sizes,
a
yeah.
different size, have a massive one, a mid-size one, and then now this little baby one. And but like I'm inviting people to come and just to use them if I can, when I get the opportunity. So I mean, I hope we'll see you here sometime, in something, because I'm talking, as I said, I keep kind of thinking, that's it, and then then something else comes up,
Well, so that seems like a perfect transition to talk about what you got hot on the horizon.
Yeah, I have a few things on the horizon. I always kind of have a number of projects on. Like I have a large scale project on in Corten Steel at the moment for a big national authority in Ireland. So it's a big kind of road piece, which is I get fabricated with a big fabricator. And then I would imagine the road building project I'm talking about is going to grow kind of legs in terms of being exhibited both in Ireland and overseas, I think, because it kind of ticks a lot of boxes and heritage and culture and stuff like that. And it has a sporting kind of element, which is always kind of interesting. And then obviously ongoing in terms of I'm going to do a project in Santander in Spain at the end of summer. And then I'm hoping to get out to the US next year, really, as well, and trying to hook up with some of the Iron community. And then obviously all the time, I'm kind of making work at the National Schools Factory in Cork.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm planning kind of things there all the time. That's all the time, and just farming work out to shows and stuff like that. But like, and I need a break. I think I mean, the other thing is that I have a full-time teaching commitment, and that's really, it'd be nice to get a sabbatical or take some time out, because I think I've kind of been doing it for a long time, and I think like I felt really exhausted coming back from Sloss, but I felt incredible. I just couldn't kind of believe how inspired I was. Actually, it was like going back to 2007 again with Dave in Iron Tribe. It was that amazing. It really, really was. And just that things like I mentioned about the student cupola guys, they were just incredible. Every one of them. I mean, and then I was lucky enough to do Wayne's workshop, as well. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then
that was the Iron Bloom, right?
Yeah, the Iron Bloom, the
Tatara.
Yeah, that was just amazing.
That's that's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, that
experience.
was kind of incredible. And then there was a great crew on that, and there was also just great people there, great people around, and like it was just fantastic. What was the other thing I wanted to say? You go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, so what iron pours, do you have anything specific in mind when you come to America? Is there any, I'm trying to think, because it's going to be the off year for Sloss and the off year
or Western
for the Western, because the Western will be in 2024, in the fall of 2024.
Yeah, in San Diego, I think. Is that right? Yeah, that would be, and I was kind of trying to hopefully maybe thinking of that. One of the things I was meant to do this summer, but it just clashed with my own thing, is the Festival of High Temperatures, which is Michael Strasnak's project. In Wrocław in Poland. So I was meant to do something with him. I was doing this really cool performance actually about Cellini, the Renaissance sculptor Cellini. I'd written this project performance piece up about Cellini's Devils, it was called. And that got kind of cancelled with COVID. Mm-hmm. And then COVID kind of ended, and Michael rebirthed the conference again. And then he's on again now. He's on again next week, 20th, I think, is on. But I couldn't go. Yeah. Actually, I think Toby Flores is there this year. But he's a guy I'm hoping to work with. I'm hoping to bring him to Ireland next summer to do a project with us in Cork, hopefully.
Ooh, that'll be great.
Ooh. Yeah, because he's an amazing guy. I don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting him.
Yeah, he was at the Western in Vermilion, South Dakota, is where I met him.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He's a really good pal, and he was he did the project at the Iron 50 with Wayne's thing in Minnesota in 2019. That's how I met Michael. But I've been over to him in Vostok, and he runs an incredible. He's I think he's a dean. He's one of the deans there in fine art or sculpture now, and he runs an incredible setup. I mean, he's an incredible art school, and he really is the bomb. I mean, he really is an amazing artist, and he's an amazing guy, and runs an incredible program. And I know like he's got great respect. So I'd say he's going to do some really funky things, and he's built an amazing tilting furnace. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I think I've seen videos.
It's quite incredible. Yeah, so he's a really clever guy. So that's what I'm hoping to work with him now, because unfortunately my 2 kind of gigs cancelled with so that's what happens. I think we all did with COVID. Yeah. So that's the future.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think of what is it 2023? Oh wait, no, this is 2023. So you're thinking
I'm thinking
the end of 23, beginning of or 24 or something?
2024. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say so. I think I had in my calendar, I think Western, I was thinking of that.
That might be the perfect one.
Yeah.
Because then it'll be a while before Sloss. Like they're not right next to each other, but you know what I mean? Because that'll be the fall, and then Sloss won't be until April of 25. So there's distance. Because I even though I'm already in the States, I have issues with time off from work and having enough money for the traveling and stuff like that. So I do think about how I'm spacing out where I'm going. And so this summer I'm going to the Down on the Farm pour.
Yeah,
so
with Kelly.
That's my bucket list for this
he's
summer.
A great guy, and he's a great guy. That'll be super. You'll have to tell us about when you go to that.
I'm excited about it. I'm going to make a video about going. Yeah. And then the other thing is the Jerry Massey in Salisbury, Indiana, and the sculpture trails.
Yeah,
but that would be something more like you. I mean, then that's every year. I mean, the Down on the Farm pour is every year too, but that's the sculpture trails, you know, I feel like I'm in talks with Jerry to try and get him on the podcast, but it's also like right now he's getting ready for, we tried to, make it happen right after Sloss, but his schedule and my schedule and like, it just didn't mesh, and it's all fine. Cause I know I will down the road, I will get him on, but I feel like he was telling me at Sloss that when they started sculpture trails, they were really servicing artists from Europe, because artists from Europe have better funding than American. And so he was like, we didn't even really advertise in America because everybody was coming over from England.
Well, that's it. Because I mean, that's the thing I kind of mentioned to you earlier. There's no out. There's like, I mean, I get contacted all the time by other artists, saying, "Will you make something for me in iron?" And I kind of go, "That's not what I do." You want your own iron, you make it yourself.
Exactly.
Or I mean, sometimes I direct them to things like conferences and international stuff. You can't get stuff done, or I'll put them somewhere. But direct them somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is, I think there's a right in doing it yourself. You need that investment. Like, I mean, it's funny that point I said to you about, like, when they said to me, say, why don't you go do your own stuff? You've been sitting around drinking beer here for long enough. Maybe do it. And it was great. It was kind of the push I kind of needed, and it kicked off a whole thing in my life, which I did, and it's been great. And I've made the best friends and been to the best places with it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't come with its fractions. I love that.
Of course, yeah.
Mentioning this iron pour, I made loads of rows with people and giving out, who's going where and who's broken what, and who set something on fire. I remember reading one of your questions in your thing saying, what was your funniest iron story or memory? I think, but I remember.
Wait, is this a good? Maybe show after show, or do you want this to be in the public show?
Oh no, I don't mind. I remember. I won't mention any names here, Matt Toole.
Well, but but I feel like we're at the point where it's like we can go over to the after show now after you give some advice.
Okay, yeah, great.
So
Yeah, look,
what about this? So you're going to remember the story.
I'll remember the story for
Okay.
sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you really want to, because it
No,
can be
not
in the
at all.
public.
I was only,
Okay.
no, I was only joking.
Because
Everything.
I think it's time for us to go over and so that I can actually talk to you, because I don't
Yeah,
know if anybody really, I mean, people probably realize this, but during the actual interview, I don't talk a lot.
I know it's.
And that's okay because the spotlight is on the guest. But
Well, you're extremely patient. I'll give you that.
well, but it's like I'm also interested in hearing the story as a listener in the same way that anybody listening to the podcast, like they want me to get out of the way. Unless I have a question, they just want to hear you. And so that's what I just try and do, is just stay out of the way. But I also want to talk to you. So, but before we go over to the after show, do you have any advice for us?
Do you mean advice for kind of artists, or advice for kind of ironcasters, or advice for, is that specifically, do you know, do you think?
It's such a vague advice,
Yeah, I mean, the
wide
thing is,
open.
I kind of think, I don't know, I think people are sick of my advice. I spent such a long time in education, and I still work in education, and we just finished our degree assessments just this last week,
Yeah.
for fourth year. I work in the final year BA fine art program in Crawford. And the thing is, it's really hard. I mean, and the thing is, the only advice I kind of have is this, like, and it's out of my own kind of experience, in a sense that if you want it, you've got to make it happen, and you've got to make your own luck, and I know that's kind of a little bit cliched and shitty, but if you want it, and you've got to be nice, and you've got to be patient, and you've got to work really, really, really hard, way, way, way harder than you ever imagined that you thought you were going to work. And the thing is, 9 times out of 10, it isn't going to work. So you got to keep going back to the well and seeing what you can draw out from. And I think, the thing is, like, I kind of highlighted my trajectory, my story there, but the thing about it is being an artist is so hard, and it's soul destroying, and it's absolutely crushing. And it's like that Rudolf Nureyev, that dancer line, where he said, when somebody asked him, so what would you say to aspiring ballet dancers? And he said, don't do it, and they said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, don't do it. And if you still want to do it, then you probably should do it. And that's kind of a little bit the way how I feel, because it's just kind of, it's so hard. And I've seen so many people quit, and I don't blame them for quitting either. I've been very lucky in my career, in a sense. I was able to lucky enough to get a really good teaching job. But the sacrifice of that is I've not worked full time on my artwork since I was a student. So there's pros and cons. So when I do get a chance to work full time on my work, I'm very jealous of the very few that can work kind of full time on their work. And they're particularly in Ireland, and cost of living, and particularly now, my heart sinks for guys going out in the art world. And when I see them, I think, you're so brave. But like I said to you before on the podcast interview, it's just like seeing some of the guys in Sloss and seeing them work and stuff like that. It is really inspiring. But you have to work so hard. And if you ain't sweating, and you ain't disappointed, and you ain't crying, then you're doing something wrong.
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's not that, but then you get to meet all the best people, and you get to be all the best things. And I think that one advice I would say to people as well is that, and I see this a lot with my own students and stuff, is that it's just that we're in a very funny place in terms of the social media, and what that suggests and what that presents. And it's like looking at a social media lifestyle. It's like a lifestyle feed. The lifestyle feed ain't the same as the art feed. It's the same thing. And it's sometimes the egos and the disappointments and the understandings, they're not in tune, they're not in line with each other. And I find that's very problematic. It's kind of saying, particularly in terms of being critical on your work, because we have to be kind of critical, and kind of can't get led by anonymous likes, in the sense that, you know what I mean? We need to be critical on what we do, and we need to benchmark it against on what's gone before us. You know what I mean? You can't ignore it. So I'd say my advice is to keep reading, keep reading books, and to keep keep enjoying the sense of that, and believe that your time will come, and be patient, and don't push it. You know what I mean? But just be there, and be willing to help. And like my advice, things like for teaching and things like this, is I'm always willing to help if someone's willing to work, but I'm not, that's the thing. It's like, it's a quid pro quo in terms
Yeah.
like that. I actually love this. And I don't know if you've got Wayne's book. He's got his beautiful book on hot metal casting, but there's some beautiful lines in there from Wayne, and they're just little lines. They're just saying, be mindful of who's around, and like that thing about community, we have to do it together. And they're all things, and I think they're really beautiful and profound. I think they will last on,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As will your words.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, let's say goodbye to our public audience. So thank you James, thanks for being on the show. And everybody who's listening and watching, come on over. I didn't even let you give in like one teaser about this story, but we're going to go over and we're going to talk about it in the after show. So thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Laura. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. And this conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where James and I continue our discussion, visit patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And their supporters at any contribution level get access to the after show recordings from each episode that's ever been published. So if you're new here, the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. So if you want to sign up now, you can get access to listen to the after show from this episode with James and all of the other after shows from all of the other 40 episodes. So if you like what I'm doing with this project and you want to help support the show, this is the best way to do it. For as little as $1 a month, you can contribute more than $1 a month, but just $1 really will make the difference to subsidize the costs that it takes to keep this resource publicly available, and you get the after show, so it's a win for everyone. In conclusion to the public portion of the episode, I hope that you enjoyed listening to this interview. I was just blown away hearing all the things that James has accomplished, and I am so inspired by his enthusiasm and energy when it comes to iron casting and art, and also engaging a community with his works. James, I've only gotten a chance to meet you in person once at the Past Lost conference, but after this conversation, I feel like we are great friends, and I can't wait to see you again in person. I really hope you get a chance to come over to the Western Conference this October, but until then, keep up the great work. I wish you all the best. And now, a final thank you to our top supporters for helping me really afford the production of this show. So thank you to Sloss Metal Arts for being a top supporter of this podcast, and also for your year-round work as a National Center for Iron Casting and Metal Art, and for offering our community visiting artist and resident artist opportunities that actually offer realistic living benefits. Thank you, Crescent Creative, for being a top sponsor of the podcast Iron, and also for demonstrating how artists can create an interesting and inspiring living for themselves by producing custom client work. You really are a great role model to many of us. And thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top sponsor of the show, and I'm so honored and encouraged to have your support. Thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the U.S. and its cast iron artists. So yes, in closing, thank you also to all of our individual supporters on Patreon. The funds everybody contribute are invaluable, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And I really enjoy putting on the show, and this helps me be able to do it. So if you don't have it in your budget right now to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, I understand. And instead, if you could just share this with someone you think is interested in listening or watching, I'll appreciate it just as much. Everything and anything helps. And from that, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Apply for the Shape of Community Rotating Sculpture Series in O'Fallon, Missouri for $4,000. The deadline is at the end of February. And also apply to be a resident artist at Sloss for 3 years. The deadline for that is in March. Is March 1st. Okay. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all of my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon and have a great day. Over and out.